But yeah, another thing I wanted to ask you about was like, I've noticed a lot of super young people jumping on testosterone lately, like kids in their like early 20s. There's these dudes that walk around that gym that we were just in that look like bigger than him.
Yeah, bigger than
and
Arnold.
These kids are like 19 years old, and they don't look a day younger than 40. And I'm like, geez, I couldn't like imagine. And I know that stuff, it can't be good for you when you're super young like that. And I mean, so I know there's a difference between being good for you or being like hampering your lifestyle, because like one of the main downfalls of it, I know, is it makes you infertile, right? So like if you want to have kids, it's not a good idea to do it. But like, I wonder like what would be the other downsides of it long term if you're managing it. Obviously, if you're blasting like 500 milligrams a week, that's not going to be optimal for like your heart health and things like this. But like if you're doing like a normal dose of this stuff, and you know you've already addressed the reproductive stuff, and you don't want to have kids anymore, like what would be the downsides?
There's definitely a lot of drawbacks to the whole thing. One of them just being bigger. You know, having a lot of body weight. People tend to live longer when they're just smaller.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of centurions, people that live to be over 100 years old, they're usually like 100 pounds or 120, 140 pounds. There's like little people.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, doing some of these things when you're young, it's good to like probably get a lot of these things out of your system. So if you're going to do it at any time, the body repairs itself pretty well. But you could be really tampering with something that you maybe don't fully understand. Yeah. Testosterone and steroids in general, they change like so many things about you. You know, people have kind of stated that, you know, the COVID vaccine changes your like DNA and things of that nature, right? Testosterone changes like everything about you, changes your personality, changes everything.
Really?
There was somebody that on my YouTube channel that I just got done with a run, and I posted like a video, and I was, you know, kind of stating what I did for the day. I was like, oh, I lifted and I, you know, got in a good run. Yeah. And someone's like, well, it's easier for you to say because you're on steroids. Like, you know, and I actually thought about it for a moment rather than like getting mad about it. I gave it a second, and I was like, you know what? That dude's kind of right, because steroids are actually motivating. People might not really know that, but like you think about anybody that you talk to who's had like low T, they're kind of like down. Yeah. You know, like, hey man, you want to go play some pickleball? Like, I don't know. Right. Like, hey, you want to, you know, play some video games? Like, you know, they're just like low energy. They're kind of just not the same. Right. But it can flip a switch for some people when they take some testosterone. Or what about the person that maybe their whole life, maybe they grew up a little bit smaller than everybody. Maybe they grew up like kind of skinny. They kind of got pushed around, right? Well, now they do a little jujitsu and they get in the gym a little bit and they take a little testosterone. They're going to feel like a completely different person. Your POV is going to change. Your point of view on everything is going to change massively when you have a little bit more testosterone in you, because you're going to be stronger, you're going to be bigger. And then there's also another side of it. Like if you start to take something like trenbolone or some of these things, changes like so many things. It changes a lot of your senses. It changes the way that you smell things. It changes the way that you taste. It'll literally, it can really literally change your life. You'll hear people talk about how angry they are when they're on it. Now, everyone doesn't get the same effects. Everyone doesn't get the same side effects and stuff like that. But probably one of the biggest issues with steroids in general, with all of it and these young kids taking it, is the addictive side. That's going to be hard to like.
Do you think they're addictive? Testosterone?
They are for me. I've been on it for a really long time.
What specifically is addictive about it?
Just the whole feel that you get from it. Oh,
really?
You know, because I've definitely considered, I'm 48, and I definitely have considered, I'm like, maybe I should just come off. But now I'm like, well.
Oh, really? Even in your 40s, you consider like, coming off?
Yeah, and now I'm obviously on like way lower dosages and all that stuff. And I get my blood work checked, and I try to do it in a healthy way and all that stuff. But I'm just like, maybe I should just, because I've been doing them since I was 25 years old. So that's, okay. You know, how much research is there on people like
20
me?
20 years?
Yeah, how much research is there on, Arnold, right?
He's like almost 80.
Right. There's a lot of people that have been doing it for a long time. But even, like, let's just hypothetically say that I stopped for 20 years. Well, I start taking it again when I'm 70. if I thought I needed it. You know what I mean?
Right. That's how I feel about these things.
Yeah.
I tried testosterone for like 4 months about 2 years ago, and I felt tired. I didn't feel great. Honestly, I probably thought I felt worse on it. I don't know what it was, but I definitely felt like fatigued all the time, just tired all the time.
Previously, did you have like low testosterone, and did you get your testosterone checked while you were taking it?
My testosterone I got it done before, and it was like 750. And then I got it done in the middle of it, and it went up to like 1500. I don't know. I mean, I that's a lot more. Obviously,
Yeah,
it's
right,
more than
right,
double.
right.
But
It can make you feel lethargic in some ways because it does make you. It just makes you like bigger, and it almost like, I don't want to say it makes you slower because there's so many different outcomes you can have in accordance to like how you're training and everything else. And they can certainly make you faster because they can make you more powerful, make you more explosive. But they will also cause, like if you take them for a handful of weeks, it might also cause some water retention.
Yes.
And your blood pressure might go up a little bit. You might just feel a little bit more tired. So
that's what Dom was telling me when I tried it. He's like, do your blood pressure all the time. Just keep track of that. And I did that. I mean, I like whenever I try to investigate things like this, I make sure I do like more than enough homework to make sure that I'm not going to fuck myself over. And the blood work and stuff like that. But so like the fatigue stuff was really weird to me. I didn't feel more motivated either, because I heard people talking about more motivation increases and things like this. And the other thing was, it killed my dick. People talk about it boosting their libido. It fucking drove mine into the ground.
Was that all you were taking, was testosterone?
Yeah.
It like I said, all drugs are like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You know, erectile dysfunction happens in a lot of people from testosterone. I don't even know if everyone understands all the mechanisms behind that. I do know that when your testosterone goes up, a lot of times your estroidal, like your estrogen, will want to kind of like.
But that boosts libido, right? Estrogen.
It can. Yeah, it can. And also if you drive your estrogen way down, that can hurt you. But I think if your estrogen's way up,
that's protective, right? That's like protective of your heart.
It can be like heart. Yeah, it can be like heart protective. But I think if your estrogen gets like out of hand, whether your testosterone is blasted through the ceiling, or whether your testosterone is really low, you're probably not going to feel great from either one of those. It's like this thing about being in the middle, and so I think we're just at the very beginning stages of like figuring a lot of this out.
Yeah,
I think that in the future it's not just going to be like a shot of testosterone. I think that like each person that seeks this out will probably get a shot of something that maybe has 3 or 4 different things in it, so that because I mean that's what bodybuilders are doing now. And when I started years ago,
what do you 3 or 4 things? What do you mean?
So I was a professional wrestler for a handful of years, like jumping off the top rope type stuff.
Really?
And when I was doing pro wrestling, we basically would say that if you're not on 3 things at one time, that you're natural.
That's fucking awesome.
So yeah, it's like you take testosterone, equipoise, and some like Anavar or something like that. So
and Quaaludes.
Those other drugs, those other compounds, like bodybuilders are meatheads for sure, but they're also really smart. Those other compounds can, so if you do it strategically and you're paying attention to what you're doing, you're not just blasting all 3 of them, you can lower the testosterone quite a bit. You could take like Primobolan or Mastron. I don't know if this will get like thrown off of YouTube or whatever, but you could take these other things.
This is not medical advice, people.
Yeah, exactly. You can take these things, with testosterone and not have to take the same amount. So you can get the positive effects of testosterone. So like if we forgot your first experience with testosterone and we redid it and you said what your goals were, we can appropriately dose testosterone and like something like a Primobolan, because a Primobolan or Mastron, both of them have a tendency to lower your estrogen a little bit. Not crush it, but just keep it in line so that you stay lean.
Right.
And then also you're not going to get the negative sides from either one of them because you're taking like half the dosage of each one. And you would do that maybe like twice a week or something, and you'd have like really crazy, phenomenal results. So when I started, the first time I ever took anything, I think I took testosterone and Deca together. That's a nandrolone. And I took those together, and I think I gained like 25 pounds. And it was like in a really short period of time. So back to like good and bad, like 25 pounds in a short period of time.
That's a lot.
It's not very healthy, right?
No.
Like your body's like, yo, like what's going on? But I felt awesome.
Right.
And a 45-pound plate felt like a Frisbee. Felt super strong, like strength was going through the roof, and then veins started kind of like popping out everywhere. I was like, this is awesome. And so that's the addictive side that I'm talking about, because those kids that you're talking about at the gym, they're not just taking testosterone. You know, they're taking a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, many of them probably don't even really have good access to testosterone. They're probably
Well, that's another thing I was going to say.
They're probably taking other shit.
They're buying their testosterone like underground.
Right.
Like, they're just buying shit somebody's probably making in a bathtub or something like that. They're not getting this stuff from a pharmacy or anything like that.
And when these guys share like what their goals are, then the guy selling shit to them is probably saying, oh, you need the orals and you need this and this. And they're more toxic.
Yeah.
Like they're flat out, the oral steroids are.
And these kids also never did their blood work, so they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
They don't care. They're just excited.
They
just want to get
exactly.
They just want to be jacked. I mean, look at how many people we go online. It seems like everyone's jacked, but
Yeah.
as we talked about in the gym, only like 5% of the population even works out at all. Advice for people listening right now, like getting rid of a barbell for most people, most of the time, would probably be a great idea. There's nothing wrong with a barbell. It's not a bad piece of equipment. And if you like to squat or you like to bench, like if there's a particular thing you really love to do, then and you're doing it correctly and you feel good about it, then by all means you should probably continue onward. But if you feel like tight and you're kind of banged up, you're kind of injured, you're not feeling great, and you just want a little bit more mobility and just want to move and feel a little bit better, just switch to trying to doing things one arm at a time. You know, one leg at a time. The kind of bilateral movements.
Right.
It can really change a lot of things for you. Like just that one simple thing, rather than going in and being like, I'm going to squat, and you're going to squat heavy and you're going to put the weight on your back and all that kind of stuff. Maybe you're like, I'm going to do walking lunges, and I'm going to, do them until my legs, burn like crazy. Bulgarian split squats, step ups. Like there's a lot of other movements you can do. And then if you still want to, train both legs at the same time, I mean, I'm sure you can mix in a couple of other things. But I think a lot of times we just get one dimensional. And what I've always said about a barbell is a barbell, provides a crazy amount of value because of the amount of weight you can use on a barbell. If you try to use an equivalent amount of weight with dumbbells, it's really hard. Like a 300-pound bench press is a really nice bench press. But for someone to try to handle 150-pound dumbbells, that's a really good feat of strength. For somebody to handle 150-pound dumbbells means they've been in the gym forever. But there's a lot of guys that bench around 300, even to take 200, and then to have 100-pound dumbbells in each hand is like a totally different thing. Or even think of a 200-pound loaded barbell versus a 200-pound dumbbell, right?
Oh, yeah. Night and day.
Yeah, they're a world of different. They couldn't be any more different.
Right. Totally.
The barbell, it does allow you to overload the body, so it allows you to overload the spine, and those are some really good things that you can do, because it can be important for some people that are looking for some of the impact of like bone density and having thicker and stronger bones. So it does have some application. It's just that I think we get a little too obsessive with it. I also think we get a little too obsessive with, like having this like arch posture and being super stiff and only doing both arms at the same time. If you just change it up a little bit and you pull with one arm, well, now your body had to like twist.
Yeah.
And there's some rotation in there. So it's like, it's a really simple thing to solve or cure. And again, I'm not saying like eliminate barbells forever for everybody, but for most people, you should probably just do a lot less barbell, do more dumbbell, and even take things a step further and even work on some body weight exercises.
Yeah.
They're tough.
There's something about pull-ups that is just like, I can't describe what it is, but it's like, I know it's not a ton of weight. It's only your body weight, but something about it is just so taxing and so brutal. And I get like such a pump from doing basic body weight stuff like pull-ups and push-ups, like almost sometimes more than lifting more weight than that. You know what I mean?
Some things to consider, like, again, kind of back to the steroid thing a little bit. If somebody takes anabolics, somebody takes steroids, they're going to gain more weight. They're going to have more muscle mass on them than somebody naturally, right? If somebody, even a natural person, if a natural person decides to go to the gym and they start to lift a bunch of weight, they're going to have a lot more body weight on them than what we would have otherwise had on us hundreds of years ago, naturally, especially if they're like specifically doing bodybuilding the way that like Dom does bodybuilding, right?
Right.
It might not be a profound, crazy amount of weight that you have on you, but it could be 20 extra pounds, 30 extra pounds, whatever it might be. And so when people talk about like being natural, I think the act of like lifting all the time, whether you're bodybuilding or powerlifting or Olympic lifting, isn't very natural. Because like I don't think we'd have ever gotten that big. Like people having big legs. Like people always love like when someone's got like big legs. I've always thought it was kind of stupid.
Really?
I like having muscular legs and calves and stuff. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, go try a 400 meter, you know,
Right.
go to the track, try 400 meters and see how those legs work for you. Like they're just too heavy. They're too heavy to lug around. So these are just all things I like to think about them. I like to do like, I'm not saying that this is bad and that it's dumb to be big and jacked.
Yeah.
I still love it. I'll always love it. But it's good to like just reconsider some of these things. What is your body capable of doing? Like, are you capable of just doing like basic stuff? Can you jump? Can you sprint? I don't know. If you can't, I don't think that's great. Doesn't make any sense. You work out all the time. You can't jump or sprint. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah. Some of my favorite things, like one of the best things I ever learned was when I had like 5 years ago, when I had this like sciatica thing in my back, I learned like all about the movements of like the hips and the shoulder blades, especially, and like learning to keep your posture better, like to protect your spine, like rotating the shoulder blades in and like having the shoulders back, and then using and like having different area, like different tilt positions of your hips and your pelvis when you're doing these lifts. And that like changed everything for me.
It's huge. Having good posture is incredible. And lifting can sort of can help force someone into having better posture, but lifting too much can force somebody to have worse posture. Somebody who's got like winged shoulders, or someone who has their shoulders like really internally rotated forward, and they go in and they hammer out like a lot of bench pressing and stuff like that, their shoulders are just going to kind of continue to creep forward. And then if you're at your computer all the time, kind of combination of things, looking down at your phone and so on, it's just going to sort of want to shift your head forward, and it's going to sort of just over time, put you in some bad positions. But what I'm trying to explain, and what I think what they're doing at Functional Patterns, is they're trying to say,
functional patterns.
We know that you can move your body into like these weird ways and have your body sort of almost like misshapen from heavy lifting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can lift really heavy and you can build a great body that looks symmetrical. Like there's tons of people. Arnold is a great example. There's a lot of people who've done it over the years, but you have to like know a lot to be able to do that. And what I think is interesting is that you can also just take some of that, some of the knowledge that we know, that you can force yourself into these bad positions and look sort of awkward from like overlifting. You have that, the lat syndrome thing going on and stuff like that.
What's the lat syndrome?
Where imaginary lat syndrome, where someone's like kind of posturing up and they're just kind of like walk like, hey, what's going on? And it's like super stuck and super stiff, and people just moving around like they have a stiff neck. You wake up with a stiff neck one day and someone calls your name and you can't move worth a shit. Yeah. I think we take some of those same principles and just understand that we can unwind a lot of that. Some of the stuff I showed you today. Yeah. You don't have bad posture, but over time you can solidify your postures in positions that otherwise you might be compromised. Like, I've never seen you swing a golf club or haven't seen you surf, but there could be like little small things that you're doing, or do jujitsu. There could be little small things that you're doing or something slightly off that is, leading to some stress in your lower back and things like that. And if you strengthen it in the gym and you strengthen it the right way, like I just don't think like deadlifts and the 45-degree back raise is really going to like do it. You know what I mean? Like, think about how different jujitsu is than like a deadlift. Yeah. Like, they're not, and I'm not saying like the only way to get better is to like do the sport. But what I would say is like, what you're doing currently isn't going to work the way that you think. However, you could still pick heavy shit up off the ground and have it have massive benefits. So what some people might try to do is they'll say, okay, well, all right, maybe like the regular deadlift bar is not for me. That kind of bothers my back, so I'll use a trap bar. And it sounds fair. Okay, it's a less range of motion. You're able to be in better posture for the lift. Might not be a bad idea to explore some of that. But it would be even better to explore lifting a heavy sandbag.
Right.
Because now you're
asymmetrical shit.
Yeah, now your spine has to like round, your spine has to open up, and your spine has to round over. You were just mentioning some of the things you did for like PT, and you were learning to move your spine around.
Yeah.
You have to, like, for me, I took like pride in this because this was my sport. And to squat 1,080, you have to have a really rigid spine.
Jesus Christ! You squat 1,080.
1,080 deadlift, or 1,080 squat, and a 766 deadlift, and 854-pound bench.
God damn! Didn't you drop that much at one point too? Some chick in a skirt walked in front of you or something.
1,085. Yeah, that didn't help things either. But I created this like rigidness in my spine to where, if I just like bend down towards the ground, and even if I can touch the ground, but if I'm touching the ground, my lower back will still be flat. Like my all the other spine will move, but the lower back it stays like super stiff and super tight.
Like you can't hip hinge, like hinge your hip.
I can hip hinge like a mofo. Okay. But I can't like unlock my lower back to really round all the way over to the ground.
Oh, interesting.
So like I can move like almost maybe like 3/4 of my spine, but that last part towards the bottom doesn't want to go anywhere. And that was created through bracing, through, we'd say big air in powerlifting. You say big air, you push your stomach out against your lifting belt and you just hold this posture. I mean, I remember when I did squat 1,080, I remember, or just squatting over 1,000 pounds many times in training and many times in competition. I remember standing with that weight and I was like, I'm not going to fucking move from this position no matter what. All I'm going to do is open up my hips and bend my knees. Yeah. But this upright posture I have right here, nothing's going to move. And I was able to accomplish that because I built up a ton of strength through doing exercises like good mornings and deadlifts and stiff leg deadlifts and bent over rows, but all of them with a very straight spine.
Right.
And sometimes the spine would go from straight to maybe just like a little bit of like almost like neutral-ish, maybe slight bend, but everything was almost always straight. More recently, I started getting into like picking up sandbags and picking up stones and rocks and shit like that.
Yeah.
And now my back, at first, it was very taxing for me. At first, it was very hard. I had to start with like 60 pounds, 80 pounds. I had to start really light. I'm like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm so weak at this. And it's not like I couldn't manhandle the other ones, couldn't lift them at all. It was that every time I'd lifted them, I felt like I was going to get hurt. And it's because my lower back wouldn't round. But if you can get your lower back to round, you think about jiu-jitsu, someone's trying to stack you or you're trying these different movements, they can't do shit to you if your spine can really move.
Right.
It's obviously not just your spine, but if your spine can move better, it's going to be harder for them to pass your guard. It's going to be easier for you to pass theirs, and so on, because your hips and your lower back can get unlocked. And so I would suggest for people listening to, try some of these things. Maybe just like instead of the barbell, grab some dumbbells for a little while. Move those around one at a time so your body's twisting and moving instead of like your regular deadlifts, or maybe replace some of your deadlifts with picking up like a heavy sandbag or something.
Yeah.
Try some different shit. And I think where the carnivore diet might have some holes in its game, especially when it comes to like weight loss, it's just the amount of fat that people consume sometimes. And so if you're going to eat, like my brother and I actually are the first people to mention a carnivore diet, first people to mention meat and fruit as a potential diet.
Yeah, I heard you guys, I was talking to you this morning, you were on Rogan in like, what, 2015 or something like that?
Yeah.
And you're talking to him about the carnivore diet, and he's like, what, bro? I eat kale.
Yeah.
I think you called him a nerd.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, what kind of nerd? Yeah, what kind of nerd eats kale? I'm going to have a kale salad.
He's like, what's wrong with salad, man?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong.
Look at the evolution of look where we are now, man. That's crazy.
I know. I'm a fan of vegetables, by the way. I think they're great. They don't have a whole lot of energy to them. They don't have they're not really calorically dense.
Yeah.
And they can be a great filler. And I think there's a lot of stuff that vegetables do that we don't even know. So people talk about the like anti-nutrients that it has in it and stuff like that. But I just don't think we really know. I think that like an anti-nutrient that might be in kale probably also has a hormetic effect somewhere, meaning that like a little poison is a good thing. And so I think that there's too much unknown. But I think if there's a hole in the game of the carnivore diet would be that it can potentially have a lot of fat in it. And there's a lot of people just thinking like, I'm just going to blast this because I'm not eating this whole other thing of macronutrients. I'm not eating any carbohydrates.
Right.
For the men and women that are mainly just practicing only eating meat. Now, if you're eating meat and you're also eating some sugar, which would be like fruit and honey, then you have an even bigger problem because you're still consuming a ton of saturated fat and you're eating carbohydrates. It doesn't really matter where the carbohydrates come from that much, but if you're in a state of overconsumption which no one ever talks about this, you just have a hard time being compliant. Well, now you're on a high fat diet where it's also like high sugar and high pizza and high ice cream and high all these other things because you're having a hell of a time with adherence. The carnivore diet can have a crazy problem with adherence. And so someone might do it for 2 or 3 days, but then they cheat. 2-3 days and they cheat.
Yes, it's hard.
We don't know what the outcome of that is.
Have you ever heard of Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet?
Yeah.
Where he just he basically stays, I think he stays like low carb or keto on the edge, borderline of keto all week long. And then like on Saturday, he'll just slam donuts and pizza.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to do this, but even in that case, I think it can just end up being reckless if you're not aware of the fat consumption. And I've been tampering with every diet that you can think of. I used to do Carb Night from John Kiefer. I don't know if you remember that diet. I don't know.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, there's like carb backloading where you just mainly eat all your carbs at the end of the day, which doesn't sound like a great idea.
Yeah.
I've done protein leveraging. I've done there's all kinds of different diets that you can do. There's something called a protein sparing modified fast, which is just like almost impossible to follow. But really what that is like rather than someone like yourself saying, I'm going to do a 72-hour fast, instead of doing a 72-hour fast, you say, I'm over the next 72 hours, I'm going to only eat protein. That's all I'm going to eat is protein. It's going to be straight protein too, just like egg whites, maybe chicken breast. There's a little bit of fat in there.
Yeah.
Maybe some turkey. But you do that for 2 or 3 days, and that is obviously a very restrictive diet.
Right.
But this is how a lot of bodybuilders get really, really lean for a bodybuilding show. They'll have really lean sources of meat. They might have some carbs and stuff in there too because they train so hard and everything. But they're going to be on a very, very lean diet. Like Chris Bumstead is at like 1,600 calories when he's, the last maybe 3-4 weeks before a bodybuilding show, which is insane because if he has to sink his calories that low and he has to sink his fat down that low, his fat might be 40 grams or something like that a day, which is really low to try to do that. But my point being is like there's so many different ways that we can move all this stuff around, but you can't have the carbohydrates and the fats being really high unless it's like for some really short period of time. So even if it balances out at the end of the month that your carbs and your fats are high and you're in a caloric surplus, you are probably going to run into some issues with heart disease and probably going to run into some issues that you could have avoided if you just had a little bit better knowledge. And if you just, the easiest way to look at it, in my opinion, is just to watch those fat calories. Just pay attention to it. Be careful of like, oh, I'm eating buffalo wings and pastrami and salami and cheese. And because Tim Ferriss is a big fan of cheese. So I know cheese is like 1-to-1. It's like 1 gram of fat per 1 gram of protein.
Oh, is it really? I didn't know that.
Same with eggs. Whole egg is like 6 and 6 or 7 and 7, depending on the size of the egg. And that's pretty fat. So you want it like, in my opinion, I would rather see somebody add some egg whites to like an omelet or to their eggs that they're going to have in the morning, so that way they're having more volume, but they're also not consuming nearly as many calories. Protein is a weird thing. It's like it's not a great energy source. You got your carbs and your fats, and those two can count against you a little bit more so than in terms of not being able to lose weight. But keep in mind too, as I'm talking about a lot of this stuff, I'm talking about like losing body fat.
Right.
So if you're somebody that just wants to be healthy, then things are a little bit different. And your fats can be, your fat or your carbs can be in whatever range that you want, as long as you're not gaining weight.
Right. And that's something that you don't notice when you're not overweight. Is like when I started experimenting with the keto diet like 7 years ago, I felt great. I felt amazing. That's when I first learned about it from Dom. And I started doing my blood work, and I told you my cholesterol was off the freaking charts, like crazy. I thought like my primary care doctor was like, "You're gonna be dead in 5 years." Like he didn't know. I mean, he didn't understand like all of like the latest research and all this stuff. I mean, those people don't really know when they're seeing patients 24/7.
And it's still changing all the time. I think that with all the information I've heard about cholesterol, it seems like where we sit now is actually a little bit more in the middle. So I think for a moment there, we were like, oh, it doesn't matter at all. Nick Norwitz did his Oreo study and all these different things, but it still seems to matter. It just seems to matter in terms of your LDL cholesterol is high, and then you also want to check like your ApoB. There's all these other things. I got all that
stuff checked. Yeah.
And you check your like fasting insulin and
LP little a is another one.
Right.
Yeah, and I was pretty decent. I got a what's it called? The CT angiogram, whatever. To check the plaque, and I was good on that. So
that's great.
I think I'm pretty smooth sailing on that.
The simplest exercise. I mean, there's two really simple things you can do for your feet. One is just to try to kick your shoes off a lot more. If you can, in times when it's appropriate. If you're in particular gyms, they might not want you to have no shoes on, but whenever you have the opportunity to train barefoot, that's great. Don't force it. Like, don't try to train barefoot like on blacktop or anything wild like that. There's probably no real reason for that. If you run, you might want to try to run a little bit on some grass or something like that, or any opportunity that you get to be in nature and like run on a beach or something like that. All that stuff is incredible. But a really, really easy one, take your shoes and socks off and just grip a towel and continually grip it. And while you're doing this, let's say you're doing your right side, you would have all of your weight on your left, and your right is just kind of going. You're just crinkling your feet, and you're trying to actually scrunch your foot, mainly at the arch. But what you'll find is like that doesn't move great. You're gonna probably, I mean, most likely, unless you're like a dancer or something,
right?
You're gonna find like that part won't move that great. And so really focus on that, and you want to try to almost turn your foot out to where you're getting a little bit more towards like the pinky toe. And then what you'll do is you'll start to shift your weight like in the middle. So now you have 50-50 body weight, and now you're trying to crinkle that foot. Then you lean all the way over to that side, and you have like 70% or so of your body weight on the right side while you're still trying to crinkle that towel.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that you like totally suck at it. You can't really even grab the towel, but over time you can work your way into being able to pick the towel up. You can work your way into being able to pick the towel up even if it's wet, because then it's going to be heavier. But at first, it's like that scene in Kill Bill where the girl's looking down at her foot and she's like, "Move your left pinky toe," and she can't can't get it to move.
Right.
You're going to feel like that because your feet probably just don't move that well.
Yeah. I recently got one of those brands of wide-toed shoes. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Flux or something like that.
Yep.
Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
Because my whole life I've always worn like skateboard shoes. And
here's where I get to be the old guy and I get to jump in with some cool stuff and I get to pretend that I created everything.
Yeah.
But I sort of did. I worked with Reebok many years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago.
Oh, really?
And we created a shoe together, and it was mainly for powerlifting. I was like, powerlifters have fat feet. Powerlifters got wide feet. All that heavy lifting kind of, makes your foot kind of turn into a human shaped foot into like an elephant
right.
foot.
Right.
And so we made a version of a shoe that was a little bit similar to a Chuck Taylor, but it was much wider, had a wider toe box.
Oh, okay.
And I got this opportunity. There you go. You see them right there.
Is this them?
CrossFit Light TR, they were called. Yeah, and we made one with ST on it for super training.
Oh, that's cool, dude.
And it's kind of crazy because like from here, you know, Reebok made these for a while. They made like 2 or 3 different versions of them. And then from this point on, it was like game over. Like there's just an entire, you know, Vivo, Barefoot, and all these other companies started to come along years after this happened. And this happened only because of my friend Kelly Starrett. Kelly Starrett was like, he's like, do you have your own shoe, Mark Bell? And I was like, I'm like, no. He's like, but man, he's like, you know so much about lifting and stuff. He's like, you should have a lifting shoe. And I was like, I'd love to. He's like, I'll introduce you to the people at Reebok. So he was kind enough to have myself and my buddy Jesse Burdick go to Reebok and start to explain to these guys about, you know, lifting. And as I started to get more into like foot stuff and looking at feet, I started noticing like people at coffee shops and people just walking down the street. I'm like, holy shit, I never noticed it before, but nobody fits into their shoes.
Right.
Like, listen to this show now and go out and start to observe some people walking around their shoes. You're going to see so many people that outside of their foot is outside of the rubber that they're standing on.
Yes.
Makes zero sense.
Right.
The reason is...
even like, especially running shoes, I feel like, because they'll have that skinny base, the sole, and then you'll see literally the fabric comes out around on both sides because their feet are wider than the sole of their shoe. But they have like crazy bunions and stuff like this.
It's insane. It's an aesthetic thing, right? So like if you make a shoe that's super wide in the front and more narrow in the back, the way that your foot actually is shaped, because you have your 5 toes, hopefully, right? And as you have those 5 toes, as you go up further the foot gets a little bit wider and then it tapers back in again towards your heel.
Right.
But a shoe is built the exact fucking opposite way. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Because a shoe is built a little bit more like a torpedo, but it should be turned the other way. The front part should be the fatter part. And people are always like, oh, it's like a clown shoe. I'm like,
it doesn't look good. Yeah, it's not
like, well, so what I try to communicate to people is that you want your shoes to be foot shaped and not shoe shaped.
Yeah.
So just don't buy shit anymore. There's certain circumstances where if you're playing soccer or certain things where you can make an argument, a tighter shoe, or even for running, you know, you can get some like you can get some really cool running shoes that might squish your feet a little bit, but the shoe might be exponentially like they're super shoes. I don't know if you know what a super shoe is.
No.
Super shoe has a carbon fiber foot plate in it. And because it has a carbon fiber foot plate in it, if I had the shoe right here in front of you and I tried to like fold it, or if I tried to push it on the desk and like let it go, it would jump across the room.
Oh, wow.
Because it has like all this stored energy from this carbon fiber foot plate that's like made out of this like rubbery, plasticky thing that is real bouncy. So you can make an argument that there's like a good reason to wear a super shoe. However, they kind of end up in that category of look how skinny that. No one has a foot that's that skinny.
Right.
Not a person on the planet that has
that's crazy.
That part of their foot that skinny like that.
Have you seen like famous basketball players' feet? Like LeBron James's feet. They look destroyed, man.
Yeah, and you know, so
pull up an image of LeBron James' feet.
Here we go. So this is really interesting. Okay, the shoes do some of that. The shoes do some of that stuff to his feet, but also, as crazy as this is going to sound,
pull up that one right there where it's like bottom left. Yeah,
they look like the toes never came out.
Yeah,
I wonder like
look
maybe
at the toenails.
Yeah,
that's not and fucking that's dead.
And that's not even a bad picture of his feet. Like it's worse than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does definitely have bunions. But interestingly enough, in a sport where there's a lot of stopping and starting and jumping, it's actually really important that you smush your foot together like a crazy person. So having the ability to splay your toes is a nice ability to have, but you would never splay your toes and then like jump. You wouldn't be like, oh, hold on a second, let me get my toes out all away from each other as much as I possibly can so I can bounce off of them. You actually are going to like turn them into like a little club. You're going to turn your foot into like a little club. You're going to squeeze everything together and you're going to jump off of that. Because when you jump off the outside edge well, everyone's a little different, right?
Yeah.
There's some people that, you know, they go into it more with, there's a lot of people that are probably upset with me right now because there's a big thing about the big toe. The big toe is a big thing.
Really?
But the big toe is going to be the thing that pushes off probably like last. So you're gonna like stop and you're gonna like come to this like fat side of your foot, and then you're gonna like turn inward towards the big toe. But a lot of people like LeBron and a lot of famous like track athletes and stuff like that, they not so much track athletes because they're straight ahead, but anyone that has to stop, start, and jump. Soccer players and so forth, football players, even their feet are probably going to be
haggard,
pretty messed up, and especially because of the cleat. You know, and people think like a bunion, they think it's just like a normal like it's genetic thing, but it's like no, it's because your foot has been in this like little prison for a long time.
Yeah. What do you know about these myostatin inhibitors? I don't know. Do you know anything about this stuff?
This would be a category for some of my freaky friends that know all kinds of crazy stuff about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Alex Kickel is a guy that I work with a lot on a lot of different things. He helps me with like nutrition and health and stuff like that. Another guy that I have in my back pocket is named Andy Triana. He goes by the name of Go Super Brain on Instagram. So these guys are so intelligent, they're so smart, and they know all the details on some of these things. I would be speaking out of turn if I knew. What I do know about like a myostatin inhibitor is that I believe these are things that were I can't remember. These things were they were discovered from these cows, I believe, the Belgian blue cow, which is a really just like jacked cow. Now I don't know if those cows were like made like genetically or if they were just natural, like, and you know, quote unquote natural cow that's like on a lot of juice. But it's in my brother's movie, and there's a really good photo of my brother like with the Belgian blue cow. But I believe they have this like
Holy
myostatin
shit, look
gene.
at that thing.
Yeah. These guys are almost as jacked as Ronnie Coleman was. Isn't that crazy looking?
Dude, that is absolutely
So these
nuts.
guys, from my understanding, is like these dudes have to be careful. Like I don't think they can like do too much. I think they can get really hurt. Like they're really, really powerful. And because they have like so much muscle, I've heard that they can like break their legs. And because you see how small, like how they skip leg day.
Right.
These guys are skipping.
They got little tiny legs.
These bastards are skipping leg day.
Yeah.
And they can get hurt.
Look at his balls, dude.
Yeah, bro, nice balls. A little bit similar is a Piedmontese cow. Certified Piedmontese beef is super lean meat, and this is where we can have a good conversation around like saturated fat and beef in general. But certified Piedmontese beef, a fillet from them has 0 grams of fat. It's like 4 ounce. It's like a 4 ounce fillet. It's like 26 grams of protein.
Yeah.
It has 0 fat. They have.
It's like wild game meat or something.
Yeah, it's gnarly. The steak tastes amazing though. That's the thing. It's still tender. They had it at a local supermarket that I go to, and I picked it up one day and I'm like, what is this? I'm like, I look at the stats. It's grass fed, grass finished, regenerative agriculture. It was pretty expensive for like this tiny little steak. I was like, man, that's kind of a lot. But then I looked at the stats and I'm like, am I imagining things? The steak has hardly any fat. And I was like, well, I'm just going to take a gamble on it and buy it. But there's no way, it's not even possible that this thing tastes good. It has, you know, and I looked at the other cuts that they have, and they all had like half the amount of fat as other steaks in the store. Like, so a ribeye might have, say, I don't know, 20 grams of fat. Their ribeye would have 10 grams of fat, stuff like that. Their cows in general just have way less fat because their cows are a little bit like those Belgian blue cows, but they're not nearly as gnarly as, they don't look as crazy as that.
Right.
But they still are jacked. They're still really, really lean. So I went home and I tried it and I was like, this is amazing. So I'm like, I think my brother was eating it too. And I think my brother like made a post about it. And then I think that we ended up getting a cool relationship with those guys. And so they send me this beef, which has been like the most amazing blessing to get some free meat here and there. Wow. But they have 93.7 lean ground beef as well. And again, you're thinking like, that's going to be kind of dry. It's not going to be, obviously if you buy their 85-15, it does taste better. Yeah. But their leaner options are absolutely delicious. So those are great options for people that want to eat, you know, leaner meat without having all the saturated fat.
So these Belgian blue cows, what is so unique about them? Why are they so jacked like this? Do you know?
I don't really know. So I forget some of the language around it, so I don't want to be screwing it all up. But it does have to do with the myostatin gene,
right?
But I'm not sure if they like don't have myostatin or if they have extra. I think it's that they don't have.
So from what I understand, is the myostatin.
Maybe we can look it up a little bit too.
So myostatin I think has to do with like the regulation of testosterone production or something like that.
Oh, I thought it was like the regulation of like the muscle in the sheath, and I thought it was like
that. Maybe you're right.
I thought it was something to the effect of like the muscle like just can expand and expand and expand and get much bigger than normal. I thought
that's probably it. That's probably it. Okay, Belgian blue cattle, known for their double muscled phenotype, have a natural mutation in the myostatin gene. The mutation, specifically an 11 nucleotide deletion.
That's what I said.
Deletes to functional loss of myostatin, a protein that normally inhibits muscle growth. So these myostatin inhibitors that people can take basically inhibits this myostatin, which stops your muscle growth. So it's some sort of gene modification that you can do that will make your muscles bigger.
You know, I think when it comes to like steroids, I think, you know, people talk a lot about protein muscle synthesis, which is hard to say sometimes, but protein muscle synthesis happens when you eat protein. It also happens when you lift, and then it also is just going on all the time when you're on performance enhancing drugs. So it's a really interesting thing. But even when you play the card of, I call it like, you know, you're playing these cards. I learned this from one of my mentors, Dave Tate, who owns EliteFTS.com. Shout out to Dave Tate. But Dave Tate said, like, you have these cards that you're playing, you know, throughout your life. And, you know, card number one is like you go out for the football team and you're slower and you're not as explosive and as strong as the other guys. So you go and you lift. And that's like a card that you play. There's other guys on the team that don't even need to play that card because they're fine. Like they don't even, there's guys that go pro that barely lift at all.
Right.
And they even turn pro and they turn all pro and they go into the Hall of Fame without any real lifting at all. It's like kind of boggles your mind. You're like, I thought for football you'd have to, there's some guys that they have other physical activity, I'm sure, of some kind, but some of them is kind of minimal and they just kick ass for whatever reason.
Right.
But you're playing these cards throughout your life, and once the card is played, you don't get any extra growth after a certain time period. And I find this to be really interesting. I've talked about this before, and I'd love to talk to somebody high level in terms of like maybe understanding biology or understanding sport or something like that. But it seems like after like about 6 or 7 years that it no matter what you do, it seems like you're about the same, right? So you lift for 6, 7, maybe 8, maybe like I did mention earlier that when you do something for 10 years, you can become great at it. But lifting, it's like you don't necessarily get like way stronger. You don't necessarily get way more muscular. You just get like way more experienced. And you understand how to recover from your workouts and stuff like that. And so you do lift more weight, but you're not getting like insanely stronger after like 6 or 7 years, in my opinion.
Yes. I've noticed that.
Once you get to that time frame, and it could be different for people, so I'm not saying like there's no one outside that box, you know, but once you get to that time period, if you were to take steroids, you can elongate that. So now you might be playing with another like 3 years, you know, but some of the point I'm trying to make here is that the human body can only go so crazy, can only go so nuts. And some of these peptides and some of these myostatin inhibitors and some of these things that are coming through now, these things could really be a break in terms of like what someone could do. It might just blow the doors off of everything. I mean, Ronnie Coleman is the biggest, most jacked person really to ever walk the face of the earth, especially for how lean, like he'd have striated glutes and be like 290 pounds. It was just absolutely insane. But back to the kind of the scenario of playing these cards, if somebody has to play like their deck of cards to make the varsity football team when they're a senior, the likelihood that they're going to really do much in college is probably going to be pretty low. You know, they had to kind of do everything. They had to lift, they had to have the nutrition dialed in, and they needed to take steroids to be on the high school football team, right? So the odds of them doing anything Division I are probably out the door. But for other people, they might go to college and maybe they get a scholarship, but they're finding out like, oh man, I'm getting my ass kicked, and it happens every day, and it happens maybe for like a whole year, and they're like, man, I heard other guys talking about using a little bit of stuff and getting a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So they finally do that, and then they get a little bit bigger. But that guy that needs to take those steroids in college just to kind of keep up probably isn't going to be pro. And if he is a pro, it's probably going to be short-lived. It's probably not going to be awesome, right? And even the guys that go to the NFL, and even the guys that feel that they need it, they could potentially become awesome, or they could become great. But the guys that seemingly don't need much of anything are the guys that they don't need to play any of those cards.
Right.
They were already dealt a pretty good hand. You know, they already have a good deck of cards in their hand.